the COVID boot. COVID has kicked the entire world out of where we were into where we are now. The COVID boot. Jasper Williams, the third pastor of the church in Norcross, Georgia. And like you, I am still trying to figure things out. It's really no reason to even begin to think about going back to the old story, because there's a new story that is being written. At the top of COVID, I preached a series called Blind Spots. And actually, I used and espoused an interesting word. You may not agree with it, but the phrase, COVID hasn't come to bless us, came alive in our church. It depends on how you look at it. If we're God's children, we have divine protection, and we gotta just go along with his plan. And I still believe that. Now, some 22, 23 months later, I still believe that COVID has come to bless us. COVID came to expose our blind spots. And for us, everything that was exposed wasn't bad. There was a lot of good stuff that was there. Yeah, we had to deal with the bad, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful that we had to deal with the bad stuff, because now we could put some energy, some time, some focus on fixing, correcting, building systems that we did not know had been compromised or weak or even non-existent in some cases. On the other side, man, I start seeing just how strong of a church we had. Even some 23 months later, I still got those right there with us, kicking and pulling and fighting, and us encouraging each other and determined to just beat this thing. But we've had to regroup. And I want to tell you, as a pastor, it has not been easy. It has not been easy to forge ahead when nobody, or seemingly nobody, could understand or see from our eyes, from my eyes, which way exactly it is that we were going. One of the biggest things that I'm grateful for is our camera setup. We did a big program back in 2017, and back then we bought all the PTZ cameras, and we bought the joystick and all those kinds of things. We were launching a new initiative. It was called Relevance Life, because really we're trying to be relevant to people that don't know Jesus or have given up on Jesus, as well as internally, those of us who have formed this bond, this community called the church, to present ourselves in great excellence. And the thought process behind even the name Relevant Life was to slide under the radar to people that want to know how life is relevant or what's relevant about life, and to get them to listen and to open up. However, you got to catch a fish, man. What do? You catch the fish. And so we had these installs going in. We put in PTZs, and we actually even did some POVs, some field of view, and we had some funky different places that we put them. Then as time rolled on from 17, some of the equipment became obsolete. So we dropped it. You know, we moved to something else. We limited and changed our workflow. And then at the top of, when was it? Last year, the top of 2021, we did something totally different. We deliberately, because of COVID, began to select the upgrade equipment for our use and needs, because we had now seen how COVID had really blessed us. It caused us to understand that a whole lot of people, way more people out there, are paying attention in here. And so we wanted to create the most optimal experience that we could, with as much of sensitivity, with as much sensitivity to the pricing as to what that was going to cost. We redid our set. We put in these cameras. We even started on our own studio. We had vision, man, to take the entire world. We were going to do that. We had drawings and graphs, and we bought the lights and all these other kinds of things, being really, really excited. Even in our home, we built a studio. We upgraded some of our cameras. PTZOptics, they have this huddle cam that I am absolutely in love with. It has become my go-to quality. Everybody asks me, what is that? How are you making your camera do that? I get a chance to tell them, hey, look, this is from PTZ. This is a huddle cam. You know, I got to say something that's different, that creates this mystique. Here's something else that had to happen. There were some staff members whose time was up. COVID came to expose that. COVID came to show us that some seasons for those that have been in one place are now, really, it's time to be released. The COVID boot, man, it was kicking us on down the road. People are turning around and trying to kick back and give it up. That's old. The COVID boot is designed to kick us on further into purpose and destiny. And so not even were we seeing some staff members whose time was coming to a close, but we also saw some places that we start bringing people in to make things better. We began to pay attention, presence on the web, how we sounded, what it sounded like, what was the end user's experience. So very exciting. Not only did we bring new staff on, let some go, not only did we begin to reorganize and change workflow because of the COVID boot, but then we began to focus on this relational dynamic. Matthew 28, 19 and 20 is very clear that on top of going and making disciples, or whether going and getting people saved, we're supposed to make disciples. We're supposed to show folk how we lived. And what my observation was, and actually what I even repented of, is that God, we built another Western looking church. And your word is very clear that we are supposed to be where your heart is and where your intention is. And so thanks to the COVID boot, we begin to look at the cross even differently. The cross, there's a horizontal relationship, and then there are orientations of vertical, at the vertical stuff. You know, our attention, our worship, our adoration to God, our love, our expressions to God. But we found that we were lacking in that horizontal dynamic. Now, we had organically begun to fund or to form or to see formed these little pockets of people that began to live in the same area. But the COVID boot, because it was exposed that there wasn't enough that was there to be deliberate and to bring new people into that, but not just new people in our sanctuary, but new people from the outside that was looking in. We started forming these Zoom small groups, these life groups. We raised up life group leaders. We began to put together training for our life group leaders. We came up with this whole, new design, this concept, etc. Began to map out, thanks to the COVID boot, please go along with the new story. God sent COVID not so much to hurt us. And I'm really sensitive in saying that, because I know that lots of lives have been taken because of the insidious nature of COVID. And my condolences to you if you've lost loved ones, family, or friends. But not everything has been bad, because there's a new story that is being written. Have you ever paid attention to the stats? There were 5.2 million people around the world that became millionaires. Also, Forbes says that were 500 people that became billionaires. Oh my gosh. Because the COVID boot. has shifted so much. So how did it particularly affect the space it is that we use? I told you how we have reallocated and repurposed a lot of our tech side and how it is that we were doing things to be presented to the world. I mentioned that to you, but our space is a pretty non-conventional space. Probably non-conventional when you begin to think about a steeple. Here's a chapel, here's the steeple, open the doors and see the people. We all remember that ditty. But we were non-conventional in that we were in an office park. Our building, 42,000 square feet. We had 18,000 square feet. We have 18,000 square feet in that space now. But thanks to the COVID boot, we were only using, and we had a lot more space to go, 7,000 square feet. Our neighbors on the other side, much like people were getting the experience of their rise in wealth, some businesses closed, restaurant industry took it hard. But our company was one of the ones who saw a spike in their productivity, and they grew so fast, an international company, until they began, as we were approaching the end of our lease, they began to consider expanding. Guess who was going to win that fight? Our second 4-year term in a lease was ending. And the company next door is wanting to expand. It was between 11,000, 18,000 square feet, the whole thing, or 2/3 of it. Nonetheless, even in trying to be communicative with the powers that be, it continued to even boot us out of our current space. So let me ask you a question. If you're 16 years old as a church, your lease is coming to an end March of this year, where do you go? Where will this COVID boot cause us to land? Well, the one thing that's for sure, you don't stay where you are, right? Because the opportunity of staying there, it was leaving. The Bible says that God opens doors that no man can shut, and he closes doors that no man can open. And out of the 12, 15 different spaces that we started looking at 9 months ago, there were a couple that could have worked, but it just didn't have that thing on it. There were some others that could have worked, but it was too high. They wanted too much. It was in a tucked away. Nothing was settling. I have a real estate friend in my life, known him for a while, and he would always say, "Pastor, it's not a real estate problem. This is a prayer problem." And you know what? I know God always answers prayer. Yes, he does. These 300 seats, all this elaborate staging and lighting and all these kinds of things, what do you do with it? I don't know, but it cannot stay there. As we were praying and fasting and still looking, faith without works is dead. There was an interesting thing that happened. We were having a meeting for another project I was doing outside of our current ministry. We brought in a strategist to help us. We were meeting with for 4 hours a week, 2-hour blocks, to help us see how we could formulate things, how we could build a better workflow. And so I'm at this meeting with nothing to do with the church, met a strategist. We're talking, my wife and I are being coached and strategizing, and my wife says, "Hey, do you think they would consider a church being in the space?" And what do you know? A software development company, a tech company, considered a church in that space. There's so much to go on behind it. But can I just say, we're moving, about 30 minutes away from where we are now, into the city of Atlanta. Talk about a paradigm shift. A year or so ago, we saw ourselves wanting in our next sanctuary space to be like a huge den, a family room. So we have the really cool idea of using the communal space. We're not buying chairs, highboy tables and barrel chairs, and we've got an interior designer that's coming in and making it real funky. And I was starting not to like my LED, or excuse me, my projector. So now we're buying the big LED screen. And so on Sundays and Saturdays, or Saturdays and Sundays, it'll be our space as a church. They'll reorient the chairs and the sofas. And throughout the course of the week, when we leave on Sunday, we will reorient them back to be accommodating to them, where they can have these pods of chairs. Why should we buy seating for more than 75? We aren't even seeing 75 people. And if we begin to see more, we will just add a worship service, something on Saturday nights, 2 on Sunday mornings. But all I'm saying is that when COVID gave the boot, yes, it hurt. Yes, there were challenges, but God was in it. I never would have thought that I'd ever have a presence in the city of Atlanta, downtown Atlanta, minutes from Morehouse, Spelman, and Clark, literally in Georgia Tech's backyard. Businessmen and business ladies. You know, we're in the heart of the city. It's not a nice area either. There's some crime stats around where we are, but aren't we supposed to be salt and light? We right now changed our strategy to begin to accommodate people, and with a big heavy thrust on evangelism. So glad that God opens doors that no man can shut, and God closes doors that no man can open. What if I had sat around and cried and bemoaned, quit? I'm tired, yes. That's what a vacation is for, though. I'm still full of mission and purpose, all because of the COVID boot. You got 1-2 choices. Continue to pursue God and vision no matter where you are, no matter what field you're in front of the camera, behind the camera, beside the camera. Or you can let COVID continue to kick your blessed assurance. I'll end with this story. Got to the airport. I've got bags and more bags and all this luggage and so forth. I'm trying to get checked in, to get my boarding pass. And I'm walking on the inside to get all the official documentation. I noticed something this one particular day, that as I was moving towards the door, at a certain point, it triggered the doors to open. Well, what I ended up finding out is that there's a laser that has been set to when anybody breaks the laser, the doors open. All kinds of study and travel and people study and all this other kind of stuff somebody got paid a whole bunch of money for. It's studied to buy the right size door for the right size space with the right size motor. If I had stopped short of breaking that laser barrier, the doors never would have opened. But because I had someplace to go and kept moving, when my body broke the laser that was keeping the door closed, suddenly the doors opened. What's the whole point of this? Keep moving. Keep moving in the direction, no matter where you are, on this side of the camera, that side of the camera, beside the camera, or whatever else your position. Keep moving. Don't give up on the dream that God has given you. Keep walking in purpose. Be thankful for the COVID boot. I'm so happy to say that the COVID boot, not only do we have a place that I can continue to nurture our sheep, but because there's a relationship with a tech company, a pretty big tech company at that. And this church space, we're pioneering something different. My passion is to put technology in the hands of pastors and ministry leaders so that we can do big things for God. In April, the end of April, we're hosting the Church Tech Summit. Matter of fact, the website, thechurchtechsummit.com. Would love for you to be there. It will be a live experience with breakouts and new technology and people that are out there doing some pretty neat things and talking about the metaverse and how to get going and NFTs and all this kind of incredible, amazing stuff. If I had not kept walking, my body never would have broke that laser. And the door that we're walking through now never would have been open. Stay encouraged. God's writing a new story. And he's using the COVID boot to create the narrative.